Hello, hello. Welcome. Good morning. How's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. The sun is shining. Today, I would like to talk about flat Earth. Why do I want to talk about flat Earth? Because I just realized I haven't done any videos on it on this channel. I did a whole bunch of videos on it on a previous channel. The channel got deleted. This is a new channel. I've been on this channel for about 2 years. I haven't really talked about anything mystical on this channel. It's been very, very down to earth and boring and political. So I realized maybe a few new people have turned up. They don't know my opinions. So I thought maybe I'd just lay it out. So am I a flat earther? The short answer is yes. The long answer is no, not really. I believe in Vedic cosmology. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'll just tell you the argument which I've laid out many, many times before. If you believe in God, then you have to believe that God is the origin of everything. Everything comes from God. He is the creator. Everything is manifested from him, which means that everything is within him, which means that, in my opinion, if you follow the logic through, it means that God must be a person. Why? Because everything comes from him. Life, color, language, emotion, shape, form, and if these things come from God, then it means that God is in possession of these qualities. He has these qualities. So he must have shape, he must have color, he must have form, he must have a personality, he must be able to experience emotions and so on and so forth. He is not just an equation. I reject the deist conception of God. The deist conception of God is very much, seems to be in line with Pythagoras, seems to be in line with Isaac Newton. It's the idea that, the universe is made of mathematics and everything's kind of like turning like clockwork. But God is like the origin point of all of this. And it's like an impersonal mathematical kind of concept. I reject this. This is a little bit silly. This is a little bit foolish. It has to be a personal God. The Christians and the Muslims, they accept a personal God. And they pray to him in a personal way. And they speak to him. But they deny that he has a form. And so the question comes, well, what is he? Is he just some kind of light shining in the sky? Is he a cloud? Is he something mysterious and unknowable? If you read Dante's Divine Comedy, Dante, of course, he goes into hell and he comes up into heaven. He goes through all the different layers of heaven and he reaches the top and God is like a giant green emerald. Right? That's a very interesting conception of God. Or is he an old man with a beard sitting on a cloud? Of course, that's an artist's depiction of God, but they don't actually say that God looks like that. But people do think of him as looking like that when they think of God. But what does he actually look like? Does he actually have a form? Does he talk? Does he walk? Can you communicate him? My argument is that, well, if he is a personal God, and if he's got a voice, he must have a form. So then the question comes, well, what does he look like? And the answer to this question is, well, what do the religions say? And the only religion in this world that actually explains what he looks like is the religion known as Hinduism. The Christians don't tell us what he looks like. The Muslims won't even. I mean, it's against their religion to depict, Allah in any way. You can write his name down, but you can't make an image of him. The Jews are the same. The Buddhists, they don't actually believe in God. Now, the Buddha has all of the qualities of God in that he's omnipresent. He's eternal. He's all-knowing. He's full of power. He's all-loving. But the Buddhists consider the Buddha to be inferior to the great oneness or the great nothingness or nirvana or what. So many different names for the same thing. The Hindus would call it Brahma. But they consider that this great oneness is the original source of everything, and the Buddha kind of emerges from that great oneness and then kind of merges back into it. You see, So they believe that God is essentially inferior to the oneness. So although they do have a conception and an image of God, i.e. the Buddha, they have a strange, a upside down understanding of things, where they consider the Buddha himself to be inferior to the superior oneness. And if you follow the logic through, well, the thing is, there are many different schools of Buddhism that believe in different things, but the idea is you can become the Buddha. So you can become God, right? Or you can become the Buddha, and then you can merge into the oneness. Essentially, you merge with the Buddha, and this. So you end up with a whole bunch of different weird conceptions of God. So they don't really have the explanation. The only people that have the explanation are the Hindus, and specifically within Hinduism, the branch of Hinduism, which is the real branch of Hinduism, in my opinion, which is known as Vaishnavism. And the Vaishnavas, they worship Vishnu, and they worship Ram, and they worship Krishna. And they accept that Vishnu and Ram and Krishna are the same being. Essentially, these are different names for the same person. So just as a man might be, he's at home, and then he puts on a uniform, and he goes on the street, and he's a policeman. It's kind of the same person, but different form, you see. So it's the same God, but playing different roles. But the Vaishnavas essentially worship the Supreme Being. Now, the problem with Hinduism is that within Hinduism, you have another sect of people called the Shaivites. They worship Lord Shiva. They think that he's the divine being. And they're kind of like... The thing about Hinduism, the beauty of it is of course, that they've managed to... merge is not the word, but they managed to balance out these two forces, right? In the Western tradition, in Christianity, the people that worship God and the Satanists are completely at odds with each other. Whereas in the Hindu tradition, Vishnu and Shiva, they're friends. Okay, I'm not saying that Shiva is Satan or an evil person like Satan, but nonetheless, he sort of fits into that role. He has a trident. He wears a garland of skulls. He lives in the graveyard, and all of his followers are demons and crazy people. But nonetheless, in every city in India, there will be a temple to Shiva, and there will be a temple to Krishna and to Vishnu. So the two, these two different forces, they work in harmony with each other. Anyhow, the problem with Hinduism is that it's a massive hodgepodge. First of all, Hinduism is a made-up word. It's a word that was given to that religion by foreigners. It means the people that live on the other side of the Indus River. And so the Indians, even the word Indian itself is a word that was given to them by us, by the Westerners. The real name of that piece of land that is called India is Bharatvash, the land of Vash. So Hinduism and India, of course, they got conquered by the Muslims, they got smashed by the Muslims for a long time, and they got smashed by the British for a long time. So the religion kind of got pushed down, and it's been mixed, and it's kind of crazy, and it's all over the place. It's a mess. It's a mishmash. There is a very clear and distinct hierarchy of gods and goddesses in the pantheon of Hinduism. It's very clear, and it's laid out very clearly in the hierarchy, in the Vedas, in the scriptures of Hinduism. But the Hindus themselves, most of them, the majority of them, they don't understand this, and for them it's all just a big mishmash muddle. And so they think Ganesh is the same as Krishna, and Krishna is the same as Shiva, and he's the same as Durga, and blah 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 blah. They don't understand their own religion, essentially. Of course, you have an IQ problem as well. The Brahmins are smart, the Sattris are smart, the Vaishyas are pretty smart, but the Sudras in India are not very smart, and there's a lot of Sudras in India. And we're experiencing this in the West now, with a lot of, like the first wave of immigration, you had a lot of intelligent Brahmins, and now we're getting the rickshaw wallahs, right? Now we're getting the dregs coming over. But anyhow, the point I'm trying to make is, Hinduism is not a real thing. The real thing in India is the religion of the Veda, and within that, Vaishnavism is the true force. It's the true path. You see, and the problem is, not only was this religion squashed by the Muslims and squashed by the Christians, it was also internally broken by Buddhism. Obviously, Buddhism appeared in India and it sprouted, and the Buddhists, they believe, in the nothingness. They want to merge with the nothingness. They want to escape the cycle of birth and death and return to just being one with everything. And so what has happened is this religion popped up and then it kind of disappeared. I mean, it obviously moved over to China and other places, but it remained in it. It left a scar in India in what a lot of people call the Mayavad tradition. And in the Mayavad tradition, basically, you have a lot of Hindus that are worshipping Krishna, they're worshipping Vishnu, they're worshipping Ganesh, they're worshipping Durga, they're worshipping all of these deities, but they themselves want to transcend these deities and merge with the nothingness. So they're worshipping Krishna, but they'll come to very strange conclusions like, I am Krishna, I am Krishna, I am Shiva, I am, blah, 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 and round it goes. So they're not really following the true path. They don't want to serve God. They don't want to love God. Love of God is the ultimate goal of the Veda. This is called Prem. This is the ultimate goal of Christianity as well, love of God. This is why, in my opinion, Jesus went to India and he studied this here in India, and then he brought this back to the West. Because I don't see, although in the Greeks they had a conception of God, obviously Aristotle believed in God, he presented the first mover argument for the existence of God. You don't have this kind of weeping mentality and this humility and this praying on the ground and the practice of celibacy and the real aspiring for the love. You don't really see that in the Greeks. It seems to have been introduced into European culture by Jesus. And where did he get it from? Well, in my opinion, he got it from India, and possibly because the Jews themselves come from India. I think I'm suspicious that the Jews themselves were Shaivites. They still have a festival which is called Shiva. They still use words like Shiksha. Shiksha is an old Vedic word. It means a disciple. So were the Jews originally Shaivites and they left India and then just started moving west? Who knows? Who knows? Who can prove these things? But the point I'm making, my dear friends, which is, I'm trying to talk about Vedic cosmology here. The point I'm trying to make is that if you believe in God, you have to believe that God has a form, because God is the origin of everything, and therefore he must have a form. If you don't believe that God has a form, then what do you think he is? Just a voice floating in the sky? So the only religion in the world that is telling us what God looks like is what people call the Hindu tradition. And in addition to this, it's also the oldest religion in the world, which makes sense. Right? This is the argument from antiquity. Because if God is benevolent, and God is benevolent by definition, he loves us, then he's going to tell us about his existence right from the beginning. He's not going to wait till 0 AD or 700 AD to for Muhammad to appear or whatever. No, he's going to tell us the true path at the beginning of history, at the beginning of time. He's going to want to help people in this world by giving them the knowledge at the beginning. So it makes sense that the true path would be the oldest religion. And what's the oldest religion in the world? Well, it's the Vedic religion. It's the religion of India. It's the religion of Bharatvash. It's the religion of the Bhagavad Gita. So this is my logic, right? So if you follow this logic through, you can come to the conclusion, essentially, that Vishnu is God. And a lot of people, they struggle with this. because obviously we've got all these Indians and they're coming over here and they're taking over the country, and they're like, Brutus, what are you talking about? The Indian, and I hate them too, guys. Like, what do you want me to say? I don't want these people in my country either. They don't belong here. They should go back to India. They've got their own country. This is not their country, and I don't want them here. I want England to remain majority white. And when I say majority white, I mean like 95% or 99% white. So I'm on the side of ethno-nationalism, and I understand the difficulty that people have, like, in listening to anybody talk about the Bhagavad Gita when essentially we're getting conquered by these people. So I understand the emotional conflict there. But what can I say? The truth is the truth. It is what it is. The sky is blue. It is what it is, right? You follow the logic through. This is the conclusion that you're going to arrive at. Also, if you look at the religion of the Veda, the political system of the Veda, Varna, Ashram, Dharma, is extremely racial. It's a racial religion. It's a caste religion. You have your different clans, and you have your Kshatriyas and your Brahmins and your Vaishyas and your Sudras and etc., and you have like a whole breeding program and a whole conception of how they should interact with each other. And it's a clan-like culture. It's a racial culture, essentially. It's a culture of eugenics. So it is a racist culture. It is aware, and it is obviously a very, very traditional. It's a sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic culture. So it's a based culture. It's based and red-pilled. And I've said before, like, I made one of the most popular videos I had on this channel was when I said that there's no clash. You could, for example, I'm English, so I trace my ancestors back to Woden, essentially, because the English, we're the Anglo-Saxons, and we come from Denmark. We came over with Hengist and Horsa, and they trace their ancestors all the way back to Woden, and so there's no conflict for me to worship Woden and to also worship Vishnu. There's no conflict because the Veda encourages you to worship your ancestors. So I see Woden as essentially the ancestor of the English. And by worshipping him, we remember ourselves and we remember our history. So I don't have any problem with this. I don't have any conflict in my mind, but I understand it's very difficult for a lot of people to accept. But anyhow, I'm trying to talk about Vedic cosmology here. The argument I am presenting to you, my dear friends, is that if you believe in God, you have to accept that Krishna is God. I know it's a hard leap, but if you follow the logic through, he's got to look like something. And you may say in response to that, well, what? So you're saying like he's blue, and he plays the flute, and he's running around the forest, and it's like, well, he's kind of black, actually, to be honest with you. Are you saying God's black? And it's like, well, yeah, because black is lust, and he's the origin of all of that. He's the origin of lust. Black people are lusty. Krishna is the enjoyer. Krishna is the male, everything else is the female in relation to him. He's the supreme, he's the guy that's in charge. And the question comes, well, what would you do if you were God? If you were God and you had infinite power, what would you do for all of eternity? Well, you'd probably be chasing your girlfriends around the forest for all of eternity, which is exactly what Krishna does, you see. So it does make sense that is what he is. So what I'm trying to say to you, my friends, is once you can understand all this, then you can read the Veda. And when I say read the Veda, I mean you can read the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the king of the Puranas. There are 18 Puranas. A Purana is a history book, essentially. And the best of all of the Puranas is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll stumble across the 5th canto. And in the 5th canto, the construction of the universe is described. And in this canto, it is very clearly explained that in this universe there is only one sun and there is only one moon. And Earth is considered to be in the middle. And above Earth you have 7 realms, and below Earth you have 7 realms. And it is explained that the stars in the sky are actually the planets of the rishis. I use the word planet, but I'm using these words because these are the words that were used in the Hare Krishna movement. And the Hare Krishna movement came to the West in the 60s. It was preached by a guru. His name was Prabhupada. And so he used certain words and terms and phrases which I'm accustomed to using. So he used the term, middle planetary system and upper planetary. He used these types of phrases to describe the Earth and so on and so forth. But in reality, they're not really planetary systems. They're more like realms, I think would be a better phrase to use. But nonetheless, whatever. You have to understand he was preaching to hippies and to the people of the 60s who had a certain way of looking at things. So sometimes he'd use phrases that they might not be used. Like he described Varnashram, he called it spiritual communism, right? But whereas Varnashram is not really communism at all. In fact, it's completely the opposite to communism. But nonetheless, he used the term spiritual communism because he was preaching to a bunch of young hippies and they were inspired by communism, right? So he used these phrases to draw them in, so to speak. And in a similar way, he referred to the Earth as the middle planetary system, I guess because he wanted to ease people into this way of looking at the world. But nonetheless, what I'm trying to say to you is that if you follow Krishna, if you believe in Krishna, you've got to believe in the Veda, because the Veda explains who Krishna is. And if you're going to believe in the Veda, you have to believe in the Veda as it is. You have to believe in the Vedic scriptures as they are, not your modern interpretation of the Vedic scriptures, but if the Vedic scriptures say this is the way it is, then that's the way it is. You might not understand exactly how it works, but you accept it as being the way it is. And I guess that's my real conclusion when it comes to the subject matter of flat Earth. I genuinely do not understand how the universe is put together. Okay, that's above my pay grade, as far as I'm concerned. I don't understand it, not fully, not properly, because there are many stories in the Veda which I can picture them in my head, but how does it actually work? Like the idea that Lord Brahma is sitting on a lotus at the top of the universe, and the lotus comes out of Vishnu's navel, and then he creates the universe, or he creates this universe, and then it's like, well, how does that fit in? Where's the universe? Where's Lord Brahma? Where's the navel? Where's Mount Meru, the mountain that's in the middle of the universe? Is that the North Pole? Why can't I see Mount Meru? How does it all work? What's beyond Antarctica? What happens if we go all the way out there? What's there? How does it really, really, really work? Is there an edge to the universe? Can you go because in the Vedic conception, essentially you have an infinite number of finite universes. It's like a giant bubble bath, right? You have Lord Vishnu. He lays down on the causal ocean, and then the universe emanates from his being. Like he breathes in, he breathes out, and the universes come out, and then they come back in. They come out, and they come back in. Because the Vedic conception of reality is cyclical. It's never ending, it's eternal. Everything's just going in a cycle, round and round and round and round and round, again and again and again and again, the same things. So the universe is created, destroyed, created, destroyed, created, destroyed, over and over and over again. This is samsara. This is the trap in which we have been placed. We are in the endless cycle of birth and death, going round and round and round. The soul is eternal. The soul cannot die. And the goal of life is to break free from samsara, break free from the eternal cycle of birth and death, and to obtain love of God. And then you're happy forever. Because then you can go and live with Krishna and live with Vishnu and you can be perfect and you can be satisfied and everything's going to be fantastic. That is the deal, my friends. So the universe is a place of constant creation, destruction, creation and destruction. This is why nobody's happy in this universe, because you can't grasp onto anything that's eternal, that you can love. Everything that you love will be destroyed. Everything that you love will slip through your fingers. So even the universe itself will be destroyed. It'll be created, destroyed. Planet Earth, what we call planet Earth, will be destroyed. England will disappear. This country that we love, it's only a very temporary thing. It's a blip. And it will be gone. And that is just the way of things. I'm not saying don't fight for it. We should fight for it. But nonetheless, this is just the way of things. Nothing is permanent. So, do I really understand how this universe is put together? Like this bubble bath with Vishnu at the bottom, Lord Brahma at the top, sitting on a lotus. And, you got the heaven, you got Svargalok, you got the gods, they're in heaven. So you've got the god of the rain, the god of the sun, the god of the moon. How do they actually live? How does it, like, they're in the sky somewhere, but where are they? I don't know, right? I don't know. I don't understand. But I do know that the modern conception of the world is complete nonsense. And I know it fundamentally, for two reasons. First of all, it's in disagreement with the Veda. And secondly, it just doesn't make much sense. So this is what I'm trying to say to you, my dear friends. Essentially, I believe in Vedic cosmology first and flat Earth second. I accept the flat Earth model, but only because it's the best modern day explanation of what is going on. That's the point. Essentially, I was a flat earther before flat Earth ever appeared. In the old days, when I was in the Hare Krishna movement, I was asking these questions constantly. How is the universe created? How does it fit together? What does the world look like? Is it round? Is it like, is it an island? How does it work? And I couldn't understand the answer, because Prabhupada would say quite clearly that we never went to the moon. But a lot of devotees, I don't know, man. It's kind of funny. Like, there are a lot of people out there. You got to understand, different people join religious movements for different reasons. I joined the religious movement because I wanted to know the truth. I went to university. I studied philosophy at university. I was dissatisfied with what they were teaching me, and I wanted to understand what was going on. And so I went to India, right? So I was always on a quest for knowledge. But not everybody that joins the Hare Krishna movement, not everybody that follows Vaishnavism is on a quest for knowledge. And some people are just there because they want the ritualistic behavior, and they want, they like Krishna, and they like the service, and they like the whole thing, right? But they're not necessarily like, they don't necessarily have a burning desire to know what is actually going on. And so a lot of people, like, they read the Veda, but they don't take it. They don't digest it properly. They don't really believe. I mean, I don't want to be insulting. Like, a lot of great devotees out there, but they don't really, like, dive into the Veda and say, well, what is going on then, right? And so what I'm trying to say is that within the Vaishnava movement, they don't talk about Vedic cosmology a lot, because it freaks people out and people leave, basically. Okay, so when Prabhupada came to the West and he preached the Hare Krishna movement, he was translating the Bhagavatam, and he was going through it chapter by chapter. So he did the first, and then he did the second, then he did the third, then the fourth. And then when he came to the fifth canto and he published the fifth canto, a lot of people left the movement, apparently. Because in the fifth canto, the construction of the universe is described. And people were like, whoa, dude, that's crazy. And they left. They didn't like it. They couldn't handle it. They didn't have a strong enough faith. I remember preaching to a girl once, a long time ago. This girl was she was studying like archaeology or something like this. And, I just kind of hit her like hard with these subject matters. I basically just said, look, evolution is a lie. There were ancient civilizations, and there are all these, ancient structures that we see around the world, like cities. Like there's an entire city that's underwater off the coast of Japan, right? People can't understand how it got there. All these things are there because there were ancient cities in the world and ancient civilizations. People used to be a lot bigger. All of this happened 5,000 years ago, before Kali Yuga. And she just looked at me like I was completely mad, but she stuck around. And then a few years later, she came up to me and she said that, she nearly quit the movement because she just thought, oh my God, you guys are completely crazy, right? But she stuck around, and then gradually she got it. But a lot of people, they just don't have the mental capacity to grasp this stuff. It scares them, it frightens them, it shakes their worldview. It presents huge metaphysical questions to them, like what are you saying? Everything is a lie? Are you saying everything's upside down? Are you telling me you believe in aliens and ancient civilizations? You believe in Atlantis? You believe in all this? Oh my God! Like a lot of people just can't handle it. Basically, they don't have the strength of faith. They don't have an open enough mind. And so, long story short, in the Hare Krishna movement, they don't push Vedic cosmology in a strong way. In fact, they kind of avoid the subject matter, to be honest with you. I know that the subject matter of flat Earth has come up in Hare Krishna circles, and nobody's really, really strongly taken a stance in favor of it because they know it freaks people out and people end up leaving. And the point of the Hare Krishna movement is to obtain love of God, right? Because once you start following down that path, once you start talking about flat Earth, now you're talking about conspiracies, and now you're going to be saying, well, we never went to the moon. And so before you know it, you're talking about the Freemasons, and you're talking about the Illuminati, and then you're talking about the Jews, and you're talking about Zionism, and you're talking about all of this conspiracy theory stuff just starts bubbling to the surface. And so then instead of talking about Krishna, now you're talking about white genocide and Pizzagate and like a bunch of like dark, crazy stuff, and it freaks people out, and people, they're joining this religious movement because they want to get relief from the fire of material life. They want to get some relief and release from it, and instead you're just like plunging them into the darkness and showing and going, look how messed up the world is, right? So people don't like it, and so the subject matter is avoided. Of course, I don't really know what's going on in the Hare Krishna movement because I haven't really been part of it for the last 10 years. Because I live in there's no temples nearby me, and I just fell out of contact with all these people, so I don't really know how things are. But from what little contact I do have, I know that it's pretty much the same thing going on, and that's fine. That's okay, because the goal, as I say, the goal is love of God, and the goal is chanting and singing and reading the scriptures and talking about Krishna and celebrating the festivals, and etc., etc. This is the important thing, not fighting the New World Order. Because you can see what's happened to me. I've just gone down a massive rabbit hole with this stuff, and perhaps it's alienated me a little bit from the devotees. So this stuff is kind of dangerous. It can be good and it can be bad. It can strengthen your faith, or it can wipe you out completely. I'm actually in favor of talking about this stuff quite openly, because I think it strengthens your faith. And I'm of the opinion it's only really the devotees that can really explain what's going on in the world. Nobody else has a clue. Everybody's a muggle, as far as I'm concerned. Just scratching around in the dark, and they're not seeing the bigger picture. And they're not putting all the elements together. I'm the only one that's doing it on the internet. If there's somebody else, I'd like you to introduce me to them. But I think that, like, in order to see in the darkness, you need a light. Okay, so I've got a light. The light is Krishna. And because I've got that light, I can see everything that's going on. Most people don't have that light. And I think that's one reason why people get so compartmentalized in their thinking. That's one reason why you have ethno-nationalists, for example, who are very, 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 very focused on ethno-nationalism, but they don't want to talk about conspiracy theories. They don't want to talk about 9/11 being an inside job. Woo, no. They don't want to talk about the Freemasons. They don't want to talk about, like, did we go to the moon or not? They just go, oh, you know, a bunch of crazy conspiracy kooky stuff. They don't want to talk about it. Why don't they want to talk about it? Because it's too much to digest. The human brain can only digest so much pain, I think. So much mental trauma before it starts to shut down and it's like, oh God, I just can't think about it anymore. You know what I mean? So you need a really steady faith and a really steady, like, foundation to be able to digest how utterly horrible this world is and how bad things are, right? I don't know, man. Like, take a step back. I say things are really, really bad. Are they? We're going through a bad patch. I mean, it's bad for the white race, but we're going through a bad patch. We'll spring back. We always do. I hope. I don't know. It's Kali Yuga. Things get pretty bad in Kali Yuga. But the point is, if you believe in God and you know that the soul is eternal and that you can't die, and if you understand the Veda and if you understand Vedic cosmology, then you become kind of fearless. Because you know this is all just bullshit anyway. And so you don't have a problem speaking the truth. This is, in my opinion, the main reason why they've covered up the real cosmology of the world. They covered it up in order to make people weak. Because if you believe in God, then you're invincible. If you believe in God, then you have a higher principle that you believe in. And if you have that higher principle, then it's very difficult to push you around. Now, if you don't believe in God and you're just a materialist, then all you're going to end up with is ad hoc morality. And so you are easier to manipulate. And this is what's happening to us, essentially. And I think that's the reason why they, the powers that be, pushed this stupid cosmology on us. They pushed it on us essentially because once you accept modern cosmology, you've destroyed heaven and you've destroyed hell. Because in the old ways of seeing things, and this isn't just Vedic cosmology, this is the old Christian way of seeing the world and the old pagan way of seeing the world. In this mode of thought, it is very clear, it's very clearly understood that heaven is above and hell is below. And so heaven is not just an imaginary place in the mind that you go to. It's a real kind of physical place. I mean, it's well, I say it's physical, but yeah, it's physical. It's above us. It's in the sky. It's heavenly, but it's a real place. In the Christian conception, there are angels living up there, and the saints are living up there, and they're all up in the sky, up in the clouds, and they're looking down on us, and they're watching us. So it's a real place that you can aspire to ascend to. And hell also is a place below, in the darkness, under the earth. And there are creatures down there, and there are things down there, and they're bad. And they can come up and they can swallow us and eat us and consume us, right? And Earth is caught in the middle between this war. The people of heaven and the people of hell. And they're both struggling to pull us in in their direction. So these places are very physical and they're very real, and so God is very real, and the devil is very real, and so because God is above, he's physically above you in the sky. Of course, God is everywhere and in everything, but he has a place up there, you see. And so heaven and hell have become very, very real, and so you will fear death, and you will fear going to hell, and you will hope and you will aspire to go to heaven, and because of this, you'll follow some form of morality, essentially. And you'll have higher principles, and you'll follow God, and you'll follow religion. Now, once you've wiped that out, once you've said, well, there's no, we're just a rock spinning in an infinite void. And by the way, we also just evolved, right? Once upon a time, we were monkeys, and before that, we were, fish, and before that, we were just single-celled amoebas floating around the place. Once you've pushed this idea of a meaningless universe, then might is right. Because who is above Jeff Bezos? Who is above Mark Zuckerberg? Who is above them? Who is above the billionaires of the world? Well, nobody. So what they say is right, because they have the might. There's nothing above them to tell them what to do. And you end up with a nihilistic view of the world. You end up with this empty... Look, you end up with a vision of the universe in which everything is meaningless. Nothing means anything. There's no purpose to anything. And so there's no real right. There's no real wrong. There's no real purpose to your life. There's just desires. Essentially, you end up with an Epicurean point of view, like desire and the satisfaction of your physical desires is the only good. Because what else is there? What else is there if there's no God? Because there's no heaven, there's no hell, and the universe is empty, and God has just become this like weird abstract concept that stupid people in the past used to believe in, and we can't prove it with science, right? So now you're just a stupid atheist, and so you're going to just do what Walt Disney tells you to do. You're going to do what Marvel superhero movies tell you to do. You're going to do what Netflix tells you to do. You're going to go on social media. You're going to be really concerned about what people on Instagram think about you, or what's the latest TikTok trend. It's going to be really important to you because there's nothing else in your miserable, vapid existence. So it makes you easier to manipulate. It makes you into a slave. And I am aware, of course, that religions do enslave people. Like, you can use God as a hammer to beat people on the head. Obviously, Islam is doing this. And obviously, the old Catholic faith in Europe had a tyrannical period, right? Where it was just like beating people on the head and telling people that they're sinful and full of desire and rah, 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 right? Burning people at the stake and so on and so forth. We had that phase, for sure. But nonetheless, at least if you're living in an Islamic tyranny, you can still pray to Allah. If you're living in a communist tyranny, or a technocratic tyranny, or a cyberpunk capitalist dystopia, who do you pray to? Because there's nothing there, according to their worldview. So that is why they do these things. That is why they remove... It's the old story of... the greatest trick the devil ever played is to convince you that he doesn't exist. And there it is. And I'm looking at, it's 44 minutes in. I haven't really explained Flat Earth at all, have I? But this is the point. Like, for me, it was religion first and all the scientific stuff second. And I've always been quite clear and open about that. And... but that doesn't mean there isn't any science. But it's just that in my experience, dealing with people and trying to talk to people about Flat Earth, they just immediately dismiss any evidence that you present to them. It really is a case of 2 + 2 = 5. For example, you can go on the internet and you can find a video one of the earliest videos of somebody getting a GoPro, and it goes up to 100,000 feet, and it's flat at 100,000 feet. There's no curve. You can't see a curve, and also the horizon goes to eye level. It always does. It never sinks down below, as it would. Like if you get in a hot air balloon and you go up in the hot air balloon, all the buildings and hills will go down whilst you go up, but the horizon always stays at eye level. Why is that? Well, it's because the world's flat. Something's going on there. So even at 100,000 feet, the horizon's still at eye level. So you can show this to people, and I've shown videos like this to people, and they just looked at it and said, oh, they can see a curve. I can't see a curve, but they can see a curve. You can show videos of people looking at objects that shouldn't be there because they should be below the curve. It's much easier to look at this stuff now that we've got AI, because the AI can do the calculations for you. But there are many, many people going out with high zoom lenses on their cameras, and they're looking at boats and objects and different things, across lakes and so on and so forth. And these things should not be there. They should be like a mile below the curve. And you present this evidence, and then they'll say, oh, well, light bends, or it's an optical illusion or something. And it's like, well, what are we talking about here, right? You can show people pictures of planet Earth. This is a basic fact. There is no photograph of planet Earth from outer space. Every single quote-unquote photo of planet Earth that we have from outer space has been photoshopped. They've got a bunch of different images and they've clunked them together. Even NASA admits this. And so the question comes, well, why don't you just stick a flipping... Why doesn't SpaceX just stick something out there and give us a photo, for Christ's sake? It's pretty obvious. But they won't. And nobody's got any explanation as to why. And yet, globe earthers will just ignore this. You can point out the fact that we never went back to the moon. And it's retarded. Why? We're going to Mars, but we're not going back to the moon? With all the technology that we have. I've got more technology in my mobile phone than they had in that quote-unquote spacecraft that they went to the moon with. And yeah, we haven't been back there. China's not been back, to prove its dominance. Why haven't they been back? NASA itself claims that they lost the technology. Apparently they just scrapped it. They've forgotten how to go back there. Is there any explanation for this? No, it's just stupid. You've got the Indians claiming that they landed a spacecraft on the dark side of the moon. This is the most gayest, fakest shit I've ever seen in my entire life. And it got completely memory hold because of how fake it is. The globalists will just ignore this. You've got pictures people doing high, zooming in on various different stars and planets and so on and so forth, and you can see their crystal-like structure. They look like chakras in the sky, to be honest with you, when you zoom in on them. People will just say this is an optical illusion. You can look at the rays of the sun, the way they strike, the way they come down at an angle. They'll say again, you can explain this with optical illusions. There are all kinds of stupid things. Gravity doesn't make sense as a concept. Have you ever looked? Has anybody ever looked up the quote unquote proof for gravity? It's totally bizarre. It's totally weird. It doesn't make sense from a science fiction perspective. So you're telling me we're orbiting the sun, so the sun is pulling us in with its gravity, but at the same time we don't get pulled in, we just end up spinning around it instead. That's weird. That doesn't make any sense to me. What happens to gravity if you go to the center of the earth? Does gravity disappear? Do you just end up floating there in the middle? How does that work? Doesn't make any sense. This, oh my God. Black holes, right? A concept invented by a Jew, and then, they had some, came out a few years ago, didn't it? They discovered a black hole. So, what a big surprise. They funded some project, gave them millions and millions to find a black hole, and they found a black hole so they could get more funding. Well, I am shocked. I am so shocked. What a bunch of nonsense. These people behave as if they've proved these things. You have so-called intelligent people having so-called intelligent conversations about how we're going to colonize Mars or Jupiter, or the moon surrounding Jupiter. There's a moon surrounding Jupiter and it's made of ice. Now maybe we could go. It's like, how do you know? You talk about this as if it's a fact. It's not a fact at all. You haven't been up there. You haven't looked. It doesn't make any sense. You got a whole panorama of space objects, quasars, black holes. What are these things called? Did you know that like 90% of the planets in the universe or in the galaxy are what they call, I think they call them rogue planets. So they're planets, but they're not connected to a solar system. They're just like floating out in between the solar systems. Did you know that? I didn't know that until recently. I just Googled it. It's never made it into a science fiction movie, so I guess nobody knows it. But again, I say no. How does anybody know this stuff? This is wank. This is mind wank. And people, in response to my flat Earth theory, they're going to say to me, "You don't believe in science." No, actually, I do believe in science. Science is engineering. Science is very, very good at building technology, computers, televisions, cars, planes, etc., etc. It's very good at doing that. It is not very good at explaining how the universe works. Essentially, science has overreached. It's overextended itself. Science is about experimentation with dead matter. You experiment on the matter, you find out, you mix this chemical with that chemical, you get this reaction. And all of the technology that we use, this is just, essentially it's an experiment that works 100% of the time. It's just, that's what it is. Science is not very good at explaining things that you can't experiment with. It's terrible at explaining the weather. It's terrible at explaining humans and human behavior. It gets into it's good at biology. You get something with biology. I mean, of course, you've got the hard science, which is your maths, and then it goes down. It's maths first, then physics. Maths obviously isn't science, but it's the basis for all science. Maths is the highest, purest. Then there's physics. Then there's chemistry. Then there's biology, and then you get into the social sciences, so psychology and sociology, and it gets really weak and it gets really murky, and it's all about statistics, and it's all a bit like and it kind of falls to pieces. But science is what we have when it comes to modern day cosmology is not real science. It is mathematical mind wank. Science is supposed to be built on experimentation. What we have now are a bunch of theories that are built on top of theories, on top of theories, on top of theories, on top of other theories. It's a house of cards. There is no experiment that you can do that can prove the existence of a black hole. Right? It's an idea that a physicist came up with to explain an abstract concept that he's came up with in his mind. It's gobbledygook. The emperor's wearing no clothes. And yet you point this out and they go, well, you're retarded. I'm not retarded. I believe in science. I believe in that science is good at creating technology, but I believe in the old way of things, which happened before Newton came along and the Royal Society. Newton obviously, he was essentially a follower of Pythagoras. He grounded everything into maths. He's the father of modern day science, and the Enlightenment kind of follows on from him in many ways. They try to ground everything down in maths. We're still living in the shadow of Isaac Newton to this day, but but before Newton came along, people used to believe that spirits controlled everything, and they were right. There is a god of the sun, there's a god of the rain, there's a god of clouds, there's a god of the trees, there are gods, and these beings are conscious, and these beings are moving everything. And yes, they behave in certain ways, and yes, there are cycles, and yes. But the universe is made out of consciousness, fundamentally. You have conscious beings behind it, gods and goddesses that are moving and controlling everything. Science cannot explain this, and science cannot understand this. It's just good at building televisions. But people look at science and they go, oh, science is so good at building televisions, it can explain everything, but it can't. You've overextended the reach of science. People are just building theories upon theories upon theories upon theories. And it's a house of cards, and it's unprovable. So that's kind of my position, guys. The Big Bang in itself makes no sense as a concept. This idea that everything came from nothing makes no sense at all. Every event in this universe is the result of another event. Every event has a cause. There's an endless chain of cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect. 100% of all empirical knowledge will tell you this. Also, it makes rational sense. And yet they say the whole of the universe came from nothing. So, in a Big Bang, it doesn't make any sense. So what, do you believe in a miracle? It just popped into existence from nothing? Same goes for evolution. Life comes from life through some form of sexual intercourse or sexual behavior, right? The splitting of the cell. Life comes from life. And yet they suggest to us that all life comes from nothing, from a pool of chemicals, a magical pool of chemicals. It just popped into existence. It's a miracle. Science is resting on these two unproven and irrational miracles. It makes no sense whatsoever. The best explanation is that everything comes from God. God is alive. He is the giver of life, so to speak, through sex. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I am sex for the creation of children. That's why sex is so enjoyable, isn't it? That's what it's supposed to be. It's a creative act. You see, God is the sex god. It's interesting that the Christians see God as being unsexual, asexual, and that sex is sinful. As far as I understand it, Satan was kicked out of heaven because he wanted to breed with human women. And that sort of thing was not allowed in heaven. The Muslims, of course, have a completely different view of things. They have a sensual view of heaven. You go to heaven, you get your 72 houris. I wonder if that is where the word whore comes from. I don't know. It's interesting. But nonetheless, the point is, people believe in modern day cosmology because they've watched Star Trek and they've watched Star Wars and they've watched all these science fiction movies, and they think it's real. Essentially, they think it's real. They think the idea that something can orbit the Earth is real. They think it's another one. Like, what about meteorites? So you're telling me a rock going through air is going to heat up and set on fire? Where's the experiment that proves this? Right? Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. There are space stations. They're just orbiting the Earth. Do you know most of the satellites, well, I say most, all of the satellites, I mean, this is an admitted fact. You can Google this. Look up satellites. They're all hanging off helium balloons. They're balloons. Satellites are hanging off balloons. Even if you Google it, NASA will tell you like 90% of satellites are balloons. It's a lie. So people believe in this stuff because Hollywood is selling them this stuff. And essentially we live in a new world, and the religion of this world is science. And the belief system of science is that you follow the science, will make it to heaven, right? So in the old days, people wanted to die, so they go to heaven. Nowadays, the idea is we follow transhumanism. We become gods, and we get into our spaceships, and then we fly to heaven. And we travel through the stars, right, on our golden spaceships. Ian Banks is and his culture. Right, the science fiction author Ian Banks wrote a series of novels called the Culture novels, and in these novels you have fully automated luxury gay space communism. That is the dream. People want to live in the stars. They want artificial intelligence to do all the work for them. They want to live a life of luxury. They want to live forever. They want to have lots of sex, and they want to have no responsibilities. And they want to be transhuman and transsexual. And they want to just float around, essentially. That's the ultimate dream. Ian Banks is actually a little bit of a genius for taking the Marxist ideology and bringing it to its logical conclusion, for merging it with science fiction and bringing it to its logical conclusion. But that's it, guys. It's heaven on earth. Well, the old dream, the old Marxist dream, the old Jewish dream, the old Christian dream has always been heaven on earth. But now it's heaven in the sky. It's Star Trek. Okay? That's the ultimate dream, my friends. That's the utopia. And we don't need God anymore. And because we don't need God anymore, we can do whatever we want. We can commit any sin that we want. We can all be homosexuals. We can all be pedophiles. We can all be transsexuals. Nothing matters. There's no right. There's no wrong. There's no morality. Because God is dead. God doesn't exist. And there is an infinite sky. And a post-scarcity world. Because the universe is infinite. We can just dive into it and explore the stars. I mean, how many times have I had conversations with people? I'm trying to talk to them about nationalism and this and that. And so many people are just captivated with this dream of Elon Musk. We're going to fly to Mars. We've got to colonize. We've got to become an interplanetary civilization. Right? That's the carrot that's been dangled in front of them. That's keeping them in line. The reality is that's never going to happen. What we have in this world is all we have. And that's it, my friends. I suppose that's a little bit claustrophobic. I suppose that's a little bit difficult to digest, isn't it, for some people? If you're used to having this expansive kind of freedom in your mind, that we can get on a spaceship and go anywhere and just escape into infinity, it's a bit claustrophobic, isn't it, to think that this Earth is all we have, and below us, you've got these caves with underground civilizations, and above us you've got the gods and the goddesses and the rishis and the sages and etc. etc. It's a little bit of a claustrophobic vision of the universe in comparison to the all-expansive void of modern cosmology. So I suppose that might be scary for some people, but nonetheless, the truth is the truth. I've given you my arguments. I have not proved to you the existence of God. I cannot do that. You have to choose. If you don't believe in God, it's very hard for me to make you believe in God, because you can only discover God through prayer and through service And nobody can force you to do that. You have to choose to do it yourself. You have to put your hands together and you have to pray, oh, please help me. Help me. You have to express your humility. You have to say, please help me. And then faith will come. If you don't do that, you're never going to believe in God, right? I can't force you. It's your choice. But once you have developed a faith in God, and you're going to suffer until you do, because that's the way this universe is designed. You're going to suffer and you're going to suffer and you're going to suffer until you pray. But once you have developed a faith in God, then you can follow my logic through. God has to look like somebody. He is the origin of everything. He must be a person. He must have life. And so who is he? Well, only the Veda explains this. And once you understand that, you can read the Veda. And once you read the Veda, you can understand Vedic cosmology. And once you understand that, you understand the world's flat. Evolution is a lie. We're living in Kali Yuga. Everything's upside down. And that's kind of terrifying for a lot of people. But it's also kind of liberating as well. It's both at the same time. Terrifying and liberating. So there you go, my friends. Thank you for listening. God bless. Have a nice day.